Good evening, everyone.
I'm
I'm
Ranon
Ranon Thomas,
Thomas,
Keepers
Keepers
Connect
Connect
Goa,
Goa,
your host for this evening, the
the
15th
15th
day
day
of the
summit
pre-summit
webinar
webinars
leading
leading
up
up
to
to the
the
New Earth Summit in
in
November,
November,
the
the
second
second
edition of
India's
India's
first
first
integrated
integrative
summit
summit
on
on
solutions
solutions
to
to our
our
problems in health,
food,
food,
farming,
farming,
and
and
environment.
environment.
I
I
extend a
extend
warm welcome
a
to our
warm welcome to our
panelists
esteemed
of
panelists
the
of this
evening
evening
on
on
behalf
behalf
of
of
our
our
summit
summit
convener,
convener,
Darryl
Darryl
and
D'Souza,
also
and
on
also
behalf
on
of
behalf
10
of our 10
in
Earth
India and
Keeper
overseas.
groups in India and
We
overseas.
express our
We
gratitude to
express
you
our
for taking
gratitude
out
to
time
you for
from our
taking
busy
out time
schedule
from our
to
busy
be with us
schedule
and to
to be
share your
with us and to share your
so
wisdom
that all watching
so
this
that all
webinar and
watching this
recording
webinar
later
and its
have
recording later
to
may have a deeper
understand
understanding
about
about
wholesome.
wholesome nutrition. Our topic for today is: are seasonal and local foods enough? I will start with introducing our panelists to the audience. Nestor Rangel. Nestor Rangel is a former electronics engineer from Bombay who worked in most states of India and is now full-time into organic farming since 2008 and runs his own farm where he has dairy goats, 700 mango orchards, and a big cashew orchard. His main interest is community farming, which he started in Santo Estevam, and he is doing it in other villages too. It is to stop the rampant encroachment of our agricultural land in Goa. Darryl D'Souza. Darryl D'Souza's reversal from 14 years of sickness to a state of complete well-being within just 1 year of using integrated natural therapies is a story that has inspired millions across the globe lead healthier lives. His book, Become Healthy or Extinct, on curing chronic illnesses with integrated natural therapies, finds readership in close to 200 countries. Darryl does several disease reversal workshops as well as spiritual workshops all across India, and he has also served a 5 year term as the Secretary of the World United Doctors and Healers Association. He hosts platforms and events for doctors, healers, and therapists to work together and has curated and convened 4 body, mind, and spirit healing conferences. Darryl is also an organic farmer, an environmentalist, a TEDx speaker, founder of the Earth Keepers Connect, ambassador of Vegan Nation, convener of the New Earth Summit, and a speaker at the World Parliament on Spirituality. Peter Fernandes. Around 9 years ago, Peter Fernandes and Rosie Harding started growing their own food. Since then, they have been hooked on all aspects of practical homesteading, whether it's to do with growing food, cooking it, preserving it, or just bartering it. They have immersed themselves in the lifestyle and revel in all that it offers. They have a particularly keen interest in topics like restoring and nurturing soil, developing regenerative practices that heal the earth, conserving groundwater, mindful animal husbandry, the nutrition aspects of the food they grow. It's really a long list. They've also done extensive work on developing a basket of sound fundamental practices and a selection of plants that they believe will benefit every person new to the practice of growing food. They've been they've long been proponents of growing local and locational appropriate crops and eating seasonal produce. So here is our first question for the panelists. Is the range of locally produced
Produce
plant
plant
foods
as per season nutritionally enough.
Coming from a standpoint of health and nutrition, uh, I have always felt that a wider range of nutrients is something that we should aim for, and also that food should be organic, local, and seasonal, because it balances, the entire energy of, you could say, a city or a state, where you have the five elements of, earth, water, fire, air, space, of your entire environment, blending with and supporting certain balance in that space. And of course, bigger balances are of the land. People come in and go out. That doesn't change much of the land equation of all of these elements. So though I have tried to, stick to this principle, especially in Goa, I have found out, for example, now in the rainy season, that I, the traditional farmers over here, they um, are growing, of course, mostly in open fields. So there are certain crops which have small flowers. From small flowers you get vegetables, um, and those are not growing in the rainy season, and that's a natural cycle. But so there was a limited amount of vegetables that are being sold in the market here. Of course, things like paddy or lentils and all, they are uh, typically, grains are grown in the rainy season where you have big open fields and you just have the rain that comes in, the grass grows, and then after that it's harvesting time, probably in September, October, and some people in farms in Goa already harvesting. They started harvesting paddy. So these grains and, for example, grams and beans, they grow in the rains, and then after that you harvest, and they can be stored for the entire year. So you have that kind of food support from grains and lentils throughout the year. But I saw that there's a lesser range of fresh vegetables growing, and I grow some vegetables around my house and on my ancestral plot too, and also at a greenhouse at our center close by. So trying to get the maximum number of nutrients, I kind of put a transparent plastic sheet and covered all my growing spaces around my house. And that, of course, prevented the rain from falling on small saplings that were growing. For example, I was growing all of the goods, whether it is ridge gourd or bottle gourd or cucumber or sponge gourd and bitter gourd. So some of those flowers, for example, the bitter gourd flowers, they're pretty small, and the Goa raindrops are so heavy and they bash up most of it. So under a cover, and because it's a plastic cover, it allows sunlight to come in, whatever sunlight you get in the rainy season. So I managed to grow a wider range of vegetables at my place, not on my ancestral plot, which is open. There I'm just growing the season groundnuts and sweet potato that we'll harvest in October. So what I did is a little bit of change of the environment and to get a wider range. And that is for a better range of nutrients. So that's what I have done. I've been doing this since the last 3 years. And I do that because, to get a better nutrition and this range. So I would like to get the views of our other panelists also on what they feel about, growing in season.
Okay, see, I am doing organic farming now for the past 7 or 8 years. I'm into farming for the past 12 years. And from what I've noticed is during the rains, especially in the area where I am in Satari, there is too much of rains and we are hardly able to grow anything. Only some few areas which I've covered and kept where I managed to grow something. And secondly, I've noticed is that throughout Goa, it's only very seasonal that people get a few vegetables. And like there are cucumbers in the rains, maybe some gourds and all that. But after the rains over, it's pretty easy to grow all the gourds like ridge gourd, cucumbers, bottle gourd. It's pretty simple. In fact, till about 2 years back, now I'm facing a little problem with monkeys. Till about 2 years back, I was supplying around 300 kgs of vegetables per day to Goa horticulture, all grown organically. And nowadays, whatever I grow, I have these flash sales, which we do, and we supply maybe at per day about 25 to 30 kgs of vegetables whenever we have our sales. So during the rains, I find it very difficult to grow. Most of the people don't grow. After the rains, I think some people have a problem with water. So it is a problem. So if you depend totally on vegetables in Goa, and I don't think there is sufficient technical support from the government to farmers. There is a lot of land available for growing, but I don't think there's sufficient technical support. There is a lot of subsidies and all that, but it doesn't work out too much. There should be some technical support to farmers. And if there is sufficient technical support to farmers, there are certain vegetables like cucurbits, like I'm talking about, all the gourds can be grown, okra can be grown, maybe not during the cold season, but from February till October, November, you can grow okra. You can grow brinjals. You can grow capsicum, chilies, which I've been growing quite on a regular basis. I find it a bit difficult to grow not bottle gourds, sorry, to grow some plants that are under the ground like potatoes and all that, because I've got a wild boar problem at my farm. But I think people can grow some under the ground plants, like under the ground food, which is okay. Like during the season from maybe March onwards, March till June, I've got about 700 mango trees. So I grow a lot of mangoes, and actually they sell. I sell about 1.5 lakh pieces of mango in retail, and it's all grown organically. And my method of growing it is like in my mango orchard, my animals are left. Means I've got a dairy and I've got goats. They are left throughout the year in the orchard. So whatever their urine, their dung, their droppings, that goes into my plants. But still I feel at the present moment, you will require to supplement food from outside the state, because I don't think we are self-sufficient as yet. Definitely we are not self-sufficient in food to cater to Goa. And there's another problem with getting food from outside. See, one thing, when you get food from outside, maybe, and as you know that I think 90% of our food is coming from outside, maybe except for rice, or even rice. I think 90% of our food is coming. I think it's easy to get stuff from outside, because I've noticed that people are not too interested. Maybe now during this Corona period, many people have gone into farming, but I don't know how long this particular thing is going to last. I hope it lasts. I hope it's not just a passing fad because of Corona. And there's a problem with getting fruit from outside. Like if you go to Maharashtra to Karnataka, I've personally worked with farmers over there. Means they do the spraying of chemicals, means pesticides, every 2 days. So most of the food that we are getting is actually contaminated with a huge amount of pesticide, which I don't think is very good for our health. So what I feel is like farmers should get some, I'm not talking about financial support, but there should be some technical support from the government. There should be some technical support from the government, because there are a lot of schemes to grow vegetables. Goa Horticulture does buy your vegetables back. So I think they should be able to get some support from the government technically, so that we can grow some vegetables. And maybe in the long run, in certain vegetables, you'll not be able to get self-sufficient in everything. But a lot of vegetables, it is possible to get self-sufficient. Secondly, what I noticed was there was a total failure. Like Darryl was talking about these putting plastic over. Like I think 99% of the poly houses that were made in Goa, they were given nearly free to the farmers. 99% of the poly houses are non-functional nowadays. Means most of them in my village where I've got my farm, there are about 10, and not one is being used to grow vegetables. Secondly, the design of the poly houses that were given are absolutely not suitable to grow vegetables, because what happens is with the amount of heat and moisture inside, you get so much of fungal diseases. So many insects are inside, where their natural predators like birds and all are not allowed inside. Because I know that in the village that I'm in, Thane, in Sangari, there were people who were growing vegetables, and they were spraying nearly every day, but they were spraying pesticides. And it was a problem. And now if you go to see throughout Goa, I don't think there's anybody, maybe very few people growing vegetables in Goa. So I think so far, I don't think we are self-sufficient in vegetables. There is a long way to go. We require support from a lot of people. We require support from people who are doing it in the fields. In fact, I'll be starting a course, like, where you can grow vegetables practically. You can actually see it. The work is going on. Unfortunately, due to the heavy rains, it's got delayed a bit. But I think I should be online by 1st of December. My work is going on. I'm putting some nets to prevent the monkeys from coming in. So I hope to start some courses so where people can actually learn about farming practically, to see it, to do it themselves, use a tractor, use a plow, use a machine, use a deweeder, use something and do it practically. So I think that should go online by the 1st of December. And I hope the government also takes more interest in giving the technical aspect. Means that there should be some hand holding, just not on the financial side. It should be hand holding in the technical side. So till then, I think till that happens, which is going to take some time, I think we have to eat contaminated vegetables that are coming from outside. Peter, go on, please.
All right. Just to refocus on a question, it's essentially, is it possible to actually grow enough local vegetables and seasonal vegetables to sustain us without being reliant on produce from outside Goa? Now, I suppose one question is whether you're looking at this on the individual basis or in terms of the state's reliance on food. By and large, we remain complacent and can't be bothered during the rest of the year. We only wake up to it during times like the rainy season, when supply chains and local production are severely affected. And it's then we wake up and start moaning about how we can't get this and we can't get that. But the fact is, our approach to food has got to be more sensible, it's got to be more long-term, and it's got to take in the whole year, it's got to be more holistic. In the certain knowledge that during a certain time of the year, you cannot grow certain, say, carb-rich, you don't have ready access to fresh carbohydrate-laden produce. All you do is take advantage of the time of summer, which is a great season for producing, say, pumpkins, ash gourds, pumpkins, etc. They keep for a good between 4 to 6 months if stored properly. Root crops like tapioca, sweet potato for that matter, these store for a good long time and treated as something that we need to lay up stocks of for the monsoon would go a long way towards meeting our needs for the different food groups. Quite apart from that, I don't see any shortage of produce per se that is appropriate to the monsoon for Goa. Absolutely no shortage of leafy greens, for example. When you talk about pumpkins and gourds, sure, you might have trouble having the flowers stay on, having pollination happen, having the flowers get fertilized and actually turn into fruit. But largest selections of the pumpkins and gourds, for example, are highly prized for the shoots and tender leaves. And if you just keep harvesting, they keep producing, and that's a huge source of food. It doesn't matter if you don't get a single pumpkin throughout the whole monsoon. You can still eat every single day from just maybe 2 pumpkin plants. There's no shortage of things like basil, of moringa leaves, of sweet leaf, of chaya, xanthosoma, the taros. Goa's home to something like 70 or different varieties of amaranth, for one thing. If you're simply looking at crops that can and will grow during the monsoon, no shortage. If you're looking to get tomatoes and cabbages and cauliflowers every single day of the year, you're going to have a problem. One of the primary, if anything about COVID and the recent unrest with Karnataka and with Maharashtra, etc., the trucker strikes, etc., that we had, has taught us is that we can't afford to be reliant on other states for produce. We have food security of something like 5 days. And that's, in today's political climate, being realistic. This is an untenable state of affairs. It's not like we don't have soil on which we can grow stuff. It's not like we don't have a selection of crops that we can grow. We're simply not doing it. Okay. I think perhaps one big adjustment that we need to make is simply in our dietary habits. We can't insist on having exactly the same menu every single day of the year. If we don't learn to make sure that what we eat every day is appropriate to the season, to the time of year, we're not really going to get very far. Obviously, we're going to keep looking for, with all due respect, talking about having greenhouses, shelter for plants, etc., during the monsoon is, speak plainly, I have to call it a fundamentally flawed approach. Okay, the monsoon and the amount of rain we have has got to be treated as a simple fact of life. And we look to capitalize, you utilize it to capitalize on things that actually like growing in those conditions. Why aren't we growing, say, lotus for the roots and seeds? Why aren't we growing water caltrops or singara, which is a hugely carb and protein-rich food? Why not grow things like kangkong? There's so many aquatic plants, etc., that would very happily grow in flooded fields and so on. Or why are we not focusing on these rather than all the things that cannot survive the heavy beating that the rain gives it here? It's not like the monsoon is a time of scarcity. We see all around us the ridiculous amount of abundance that we have of plants that we don't realize. At the very minimum, a good 20% of the plants that grow with absolutely no trouble are potential food sources during the monsoon. And these are wild plants. But there's no reason to restrict our eating during the monsoon to going foraging in the wild. There's a huge number of crops that do extremely well in the monsoon that we need to start incorporating into our practices and actually incorporating into our diets. And without significant adjustments and without actually being seasonally sensitive, we're never going to have food security. And without picking locationally appropriate foods that are appropriate to the season, again, we're just not going to cut it. Over to you, Darryl.
Thanks, Peter. So, yes, though, there are, like, I agree with Nestor that not many farmers in Goa are growing, vegetables. They all go for certain crops that, even in the rains, that are popular in Goa. And one of them is, like beans, what we call orsane. And of course, the other smaller regular.
That's not during the rains, that's after the rains.
After the rains. That's after the rains.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, at least now they are bringing out produce of string beans, for example. And now even the farmers who are in Goa, they are not producing, organic. So we are trying to see that how can more people grow natural and, locally organic vegetables. And I agree with you, Peter, that, not everybody can kind of put this plastic cover or even, now my plastic cover is not entirely a greenhouse, typical environment where, the humidity and temperature and all of that is controlled, because it's just an overhead cover and the sides are open for, air to pass.
I guess I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm simply saying that we need to start treating each changing aspect of each season as an asset, not a problem.
Right. Okay.
There are things about summer where the heat and the intense sunlight and the duration of sunlight needs to be treated as something that you capitalize on, and you grow crops that are appropriate to that do particularly well then. The lower temperatures in winter, such as it is, that's when you capitalize on those low temperatures by growing things like, say, carrots, if we must, cabbages, cauliflowers, etc., that need lower temperatures to head successfully. That's where we welcome the cold and say, okay, this is what we grow now.
Right.
By the same token, we need to welcome the water, welcome the rain, and grow stuff that really likes those conditions. It's
Yes.
the mistake we make is insisting on trying to grow everything throughout the year. And that's just not in my mind sound way to go about this, because we keep treating each of these seasonal aspects that are not all that suitable to the plants that we're trying to grow them as the enemy, rather than looking on how we can better utilize what the primary facet of that, the weather at that time of year is, and seek to capitalize on that. We've got to be using these things to our advantage, not trying to fight against them and guard against them. Because every time we have a monsoon like we had this year, the mere fact that we had so much rain every single day, a huge paucity of sunlight. So even if you'd grown on the plastic, the lack of sufficient sunlight was simply meant that whatever we produce would be nutritionally challenged.
Right.
It just won't do as well. There's a whole bunch of ways in which, if we embrace that aspect of the season and seek to actually utilize it to our benefit by actually hoping to get more of it, rather than, heavy rains are basically the USP of the monsoon. If you don't accept that and say, okay, what can I grow that really likes heavy rain? What can I grow that likes a lot of water? What can I grow that really likes wet conditions? Then we do well. If we try to say, okay, I really want to grow this stuff. It's going to be raining and this really doesn't like rain. So what can I do to protect it from the rain? Then we're looking at application heavy farming, which really will not stand us in very good stead. If every farmer has got to put up huge amounts of shelter, etc., how is it affordable? How is it
Right.
look at the condition to keep, even if you manage protection against the rain, there's a whole bunch of other climatic factors that still mitigate against growing that produce during that season as successfully as it would grow in a more appropriate climate, more appropriate season rather.
Right.
So why keep fighting nature rather than simply working with it or embracing it and playing to its strengths?
Right. And I've seen the evidence of that also. What you mentioned, the vegetables that grow under this plastic shade, they do grow at a slower pace, and they are of a smaller size, and probably, like you mentioned, they will be nutritionally deficient compared to the peak season in which they grow. And
Absolutely.
right. And the second point was also true that when you especially go for a larger scale of farming, that's not just around your house, so it becomes unaffordable to expect that farmers would do that. So very good points there. And yeah.
Well, there's a whole amount of labor, etc., inherent in
Right.
you put up the shelters, and then when the summer comes, you got to take it down. Or why there's deterioration, wear and tear, there's all the plastic, etc., that we discard into the environment. Essentially, we are then engaging in practices that actually poison the environment and severely degrade the quality of the food that we're seeking to eat. And at the end of the day, the Earth Summit, I'm going to assume, has got to be primarily against improving our quality of health by seeking to adopt practices that are regenerative, both for the Earth and for ourselves. And we have to look at practices that make more sense in the long term, that benefit us, benefit the environment, and will actually result in better food for us. We can't have food at all costs. See, the whole thing about growing in greenhouses at a time that's not appropriate simply means that we are able to have a menu that we can order from or eat from throughout the year. But is that really the best thing? Should you actually be able to eat a cauliflower every single day of the year? Our lives not richer and healthier by actually being able to, by sticking to eat the produce that is that grows best at a particular time of year. So we know that, okay, number one, it grows locally when you don't have a huge amount of food miles, etc. The simple fact of it being harvested that much closer to ripening means that it's loaded with so much more actual nutrients, so much more nutrition and so many more nutrients, sugars, acids, etc. than is the case if it comes from the neighboring state. Because to fill up a truck from a state away, 2 states away, they've got to harvest the stuff while it's significantly underripe. And as soon as you harvest it, that's the end of the flow of nutrients into that vegetable or fruit. Now, in the 5 days to 10 days to 2 weeks that it takes to actually reach your plate, this produce may achieve the appearance of ripeness, which at the end of the day is also a function of time and aging. But strictly speaking, we want our ripeness to be the product of nutrients supplied by the plant to that fruit or to that vegetable so that it's actually reached optimum ripeness on the plant. We then eat it, we get the maximum benefit of, we're actually eating healthy food. But if what we're eating has been actually plucked 2 weeks ago, remember that each fruit or each tomato, each carrot, each whatever, is still a living organism. Its cells are alive. They are engaging in a whole bunch of living processes to simply stay alive, to breathing, exchange of fluids, exchange of gases, etc., which takes energy. It's really energy intensive. These processes need to be fueled. Where does that energy come from? It cannibalizes whatever is present in the fruit at that time, at that point in time, from that point in time. So by the time it actually reaches you 10 days later, whatever nutrients were present in that half-ripe bit of whatever has been utilized to actually bring the seeds to maturity and to keep the rest of the fruit alive until then. How much nutrition is actually left for you by that point?
You're right, Peter. Peter, you're right in a way. What I'm trying to say is, see, in Goa,
yeah,
I don't think anybody is actually growing on a commercial scale. Like how,
no reason.
like, I don't think anybody is growing sufficient amount of food that is going to.
And
I think we need to start.
You're absolutely right. You are absolutely right.
We need to start with whatever we can do. Means if you start getting into the too technical aspects of growing food, it's going to be very difficult for a start.
What do you mean by technical
because
aspects?
of the thing, I'll tell you, even now at the moment in Goa, we are importing about 10 crore worth of rice every month.
Okay.
So at least we can start out first thing, like in the rains. Rice definitely grows in heavy rainfall.
Sure.
I think we should start getting self-sufficient in rice. Unfortunately, what is happening is most of our rice that we grow over here is being exported to other states. And how is it being exported? Like the farmer, the agent that buys it from the farmer is paying just 12 or 13 rupees. Whereas 7 rupees is getting subsidized, being a support price of 20 rupees, 7 rupees is getting subsidized by the government from our taxes. So basically some dealer, somebody is making money at the cost of the taxpayers over here.
Absolutely.
So, and what are they paying for? What are taxpayers paying? That this very same paddy is going to the other states. I'm saying 90% of the paddy is going to other states. So what I'm saying is that let us start with something. Don't go into too technical things like in the slopes, on the slopes, like in many places, you can grow vegetables, you can grow something.
There's nothing technical. I'm actually saying the opposite. Relying on technology, on artificial shelter, etc., is basically
people are hardly growing anything. We should be starting to grow. You go to see, it's hardly any percentage of. There's hardly anybody growing anything. Unfortunately, in Goa,
absolutely right.
Agriculture is not a subsistence for a people. It's not subsistence for a people. This like you go to Maharashtra, you go to Karnataka. If a person's field fails, unfortunately, like today, my workers, they had grown soybean in Buldana district. And there's heavy rain over there at the moment, and they have lost their crop. And that fellow was virtually crying. He's saying, "What do I do?" It doesn't happen in Goa that way. So that's the one of the reasons why people are not going to it. It's not a livelihood actually. For most of the people, it's not a livelihood. Like in Sattari, All the fields are lying fallow throughout the year. There is a wild animal problem. The only crop that we take in Sattari on a large scale is cashew. Like throughout the year, cashew, you start your cashew, means you start cleaning your fields from maybe December, and the cashew season lasts till about May to the mid of May. After that, people are free and nobody grows anything. There's hardly any paddy being grown, nothing is being grown. So people actually have become complacent in Goa. I don't know how some of them have got government jobs or what, but frankly speaking, practically I've seen people are not growing sufficient food for themselves. And I don't think we'll be self-sufficient for quite some time till our attitude changes towards food. Now we know we are getting food from, we have got absolutely no food security. If there is a storm, if there's floods, you see vegetable prices going to 120, 130, 150 rupees also. And there's a shortage of veg, and we are basically at the moment, we are eating nonsense. We are eating pesticide-laced food, which is actually very bad for our health.
Yep.
So we have to, there has to be some certain way that people can grow at least for themselves. Means, okay, in a flat you might not be able to grow, but there should be some people taking up, there should be an initiative. I'm saying it's not going to be possible to be totally privately, what is that, engine by, there cannot be a total private engine for all this. The government has to be stepping in and making sure that it happens, because there are so
Well, at
many
the end of the day,
there are so many subsidies going into this thing, but end of the day, this is zero actually. If you go to see, there's no food security. Now you see in the rain, some people sell some few cucumbers, a few this. After that, it stopped. Then you find people like, but there are things like tamdi bhaji or something like that, which can be grown in trays in your house.
Yes.
You put it out in your balcony, you can grow it in your trays. It's very easy to grow tamdi bhaji. It's very easy to grow methi. It's very easy to grow amaranthus. It's not very difficult. There are certain things that you can definitely grow at home. So everybody should go in for some certain items. They have to go in. Otherwise, but if you try to just go in for, I don't know, I've seen it over here. I've been seeing it for the past many years. I'm only into farming for the past 12 years. But I don't see Goa going forward anywhere in the vegetable scenario. Okay, rice and all people do grow. But unfortunately, they are not growing. They are keeping just a little for themselves. And most of the rice is being sold to the agents like Goa Bagedar or whoever, who in fact send it forward to another state.
You're absolutely right. Now, that's a bit of a long conversation itself.
It has to be a policy decision from the government that a farmer, like if you're taking a subsidy, you should be able to show results. Because I know that nobody comes to check what you're doing. Like the subsidy is given to you.
If I might interrupt, Nestor, as of right now, let's leave the government, what the government should and shouldn't do aside for the moment, because that's a separate matter. First, the question is what can be done, whether it's the government or the individual or groups of people or small farmers, big farmers, whatever. Are there options? Are there crops that can be grown? Is there a sufficient number of crops to provide us with the nutrition that we're looking for? Are there answers within Goa, or do we have no option but to look outside?
From what I've seen at the moment, I have not seen any answers in Goa. I've not seen anybody doing, like I've tried doing on a larger scale vegetables. When you're doing vegetables on a larger scale, see, like if you see most of these places, Belgaum or Karnataka, where they are selling, it's a family that is growing. You know, they don't hire too much of labor. It's a family that is growing everything. So
can I suggest that perhaps the answer is not for
in Goa, it's not happening. I don't see anything happening on the ground, like in the fields. Means like, okay, at the most it's rice. After that, a few people grow, when they get some water, they grow some vegetables like cucumbers and all that. And if you see now, after the rains, there's hardly anything being grown. You go anywhere, the fields are lying fallow.
Sure, Nestor. I'm questioning whether the answer is actually to have large operations growing huge amounts of food, or whether we should have small farmers or small collectives of people getting together to more effectively manage relatively small parcels of land. Because it's a proven fact the world over that smaller tracts of land are hugely more productive, anywhere from 10 to 30 times, 40 times more productive than large pieces of land, simply because you're able to manage intensive growing much more effectively and much more cost effectively, which is important. If we stick to essentially looking at monocropping approaches, because we are trying to manage huge production by small numbers of people, you're kind of doomed to failure, I'm afraid. What we desperately need is for more people to actually get into this, for more people to get involved, for more people to realize that they have a vested interest, that they need to have a huge stake in this. Because then with relatively small pieces of land, there's such a huge amount of production that you can get out of it that there's no real reason for, well, at least those people who take the initiative to have any food security problems at all. During the monsoon over here, I myself started with a new piece of land that was completely bare as of roughly April this year. And by roughly 2 or 3 months ago, it was absolutely covered green and incredibly productive. There was no way for me to keep up with the amount of produce coming out of that. I've just had to leave it alone. And there's really no shortage of things that can grow. There's no shortage of things that will grow very easily. There's no shortage of things that don't require very much by way of preparation or inputs or money. And I think perhaps the important thing is for us as consumers to start educating ourselves about what the possibilities are, to start changing our dietary habits, and to force change with our pocketbooks, with our wallets. Because at the end of the day, the farmer will be willing to grow what we ask for. The farmer will be willing to switch from things that they grow kind of because that because they don't really see much option or can't think of anything else that we might ask for. If we simply start asking for the things that are seasonally appropriate, if we start asking for the things that grow here with no problem, then we're giving them incentive to actually supply us with this stuff. If we keep asking for tomatoes in the rains, if we keep asking for onions in the rains, it's not going to be a happy state of affairs for anybody. Can I ask you guys this? I assume you've been shopping for tomatoes and onions throughout the monsoon. What's the quality of produce been like? Have you been finding, say, tomatoes that are actually ripe, that aren't red outside and hard and yellow inside?
Yeah, that's right.
Does anything about these tomatoes strike you as satisfactory produce? Do you think that's nutritionally beneficial to you in any way at all? Why the hell are we insisting on having this? There are so many alternatives. Why aren't we eating those? In the monsoons, if you don't already have onions stored that we purchased in the summer to take us through the monsoons, why don't we look at eating onion greens and garlic greens, which grow with no trouble at all? We just keep cutting and harvesting and eating them. They give us the same zip and zing as an onion bulb or garlic bulb, but they will grow in the monsoon with no trouble. We won't get bulbs, but at the end of the day, we're looking for the sulfurs, etc. They give us the flavors of the alliums. And why do we not switch to this? Why don't we take a more intelligent, more considered, more concerned look at how nutrition works, at what the food options are, at whether we actually limit it to only insisting on the stuff that we ate in summer, that the stuff that we're looking forward to eat in the winter, and insisting on getting that during the monsoon as well. Why aren't we looking at more seasonally appropriate produce?
Very right, Peter. So at least in the case of Goa, I'm not really aware at the state level or at any, board or information level, at the government or any public body here, is there, I've not come across
Actually,
anybody.
Darryl, can I interrupt for a minute?
Yeah.
Actually, I remember the CM just recently giving instructions to each of his zonal agriculture officer that each person, each of the officers under him or her should be able to at least get 10 farmers to start growing vegetables. I'm not saying go in for everything. Just start growing something that grows in that particular season. But sadly to say, I don't think it's happened. Now this is about 4 or 5 months back. I don't see movement on the ground.
we really have to stop talking about the government. Let me ask you this:
No,
how much does
it's not
Pramod
going to
Sawant?
happen,
No, no,
Peter.
Nestor,
Peter, it's
let me
not going
ask
to
you.
happen without their help.
The government is not them. Government is us. Government is meant to be a participatory exercise. The government isn't
No, I
faceless.
understand that. I understand, but I'm
No, no,
talking
hang on,
on the
hang on,
practical
hang on.
level.
No, no. On the practical level, Nestor, it's very simply this. Who actually knows about growing vegetables? You, Nestor Rangel, or Pramod Sawant? Even whoever the hell is holding the portfolio of agriculture right now, does he know more than you? Who's actually more qualified to educate people about what should and shouldn't be grown, how it should be grown, whether it should be grown?
You see, actually, I'm talking about the whole
Is
state
it?
on a
No,
whole.
no,
See, we have
Nestor,
got a dedicated
no,
agriculture department.
Nestor, yes,
We have got a dedicated, I'm talking
we
practically,
do.
Peter. We have got a dedicated agriculture department.
I understand
Who is
that,
not
but the whole
doing the
point
work.
is,
Actually, I feel we should, if it's not happening, we should stop the
not doing the
agriculture
work.
department, because all the only work they are doing is give us subsidies.
Yeah,
Nothing
let me
else.
make a point that we are taking Nestor's point. Of course, we agreed and we have seen the evidence that the state is not doing anything. So, agreed to that. Now, I think Peter's talking about what we can do. So, let's talk about what we can do. And are we set up or are we creating any information center or resources for more of our farmers to, grow vegetables? Yes, Peter.
I'm very conscious and mindful of the fact that we need the state and we need the resources of the state to actually get somewhere, to gain traction and to be able to have the necessary reach. But we also need to be mindful of the fact that people holding, people in decision-making positions, people in positions of authority, don't get there because they are qualified to be there, because they have the knowledge. They're simply elected to that position. Okay, the chief minister of the state is not actually qualified to make decisions that will that are well thought out and that will actually be beneficial to us. He just doesn't have the knowledge. The minister for agriculture, same thing. Okay.
Yeah, so
however, there's a whole bunch of people who do have the knowledge, but at the end of the day, if we don't actually make the effort to figure out how to collate that knowledge, how to present that knowledge, how to share that knowledge, how to disseminate it, we can't then keep pointing fingers at the government and at the state and bemoaning the fact that they aren't doing anything worthwhile or sensible or useful. They're not equipped to do so right now. There has to be a concerted effort to actually look at collating the knowledge, at presenting knowledge, sharing the knowledge, and get it to the quarters that matter.
That's right. Very correct, Peter. So, at least in Goa, as per your knowledge, is any website or resource or group of farmers, is such a resource pool being created?
Not to my knowledge, but this is something that we need to work towards.
Right.
At the end of the day, there's a whole bunch of people very specifically interested in exactly this topic, very interested in trying to have the state do stuff, but the state cannot actually do things that are good for us on the basis of the information that it currently has. Okay, I mean, what does the Minister for Agriculture know about other than whatever the pesticide companies or the fertilizer companies feed them with?
Right.
Second question is, what are the advantages and disadvantages of getting fresh plant food supply from out of state?
Yeah, at the end of the day, like I said, we're looking at health as one of the primary motivators for us even looking at the issue of nutrition and what foods available and local foods and seasonal foods, etc. Not just health nutrition. We want value for money. We want proper bang for a buck. If we eat a fruit, we want to get as much, derive as much benefit from that exercise as possible. There's not much point in being able to eat, say, an apple that's come all the way from New Zealand, if nutritionally speaking, eating that apple is kind of not very different from eating the box that it came in. The flavor might be there, but the nutrients, simply because of the length of time in Harrington, it's being plucked over there and ending up on a plate over here, just means it's hugely bereft of most of the nutrients that it originally came with. And then what's the point? Are we looking to eat healthy, or are we just looking to have variety?
Yes, so completely correct on that point, which I agree to also, that on the transit way, the nutrients in that kind of fruit or vegetable itself is getting used up into the ripening of that fruit. And so you have, nutritionally deficient thing that finally reaches you from this. So that's
we have to remain mindful of the fact that because you're picked unripe, not even half the nutrients that would typically be present in a ripe
that's correct.
Are there from the start. So by the time it gets to you, there's so much, there's nothing left. If it actually started out fully ripe, that's something. But we've been looking at the effects of time and duration from harvest to plate, and what that does to nutrients, and it's
and added to that is also the cost, because especially when people look for organic produce from outside, then there is a cost to that. People have to get it organically certified, and so the cost of the produce itself goes up. But like here in Goa, locally, when we were producing locally, and people were coming to our farmers markets, they knew the farmer, and the produce was just taken out early in the morning. So they are getting produce of the same day, because they know the farmers, they visited the farmers, and they know that they are doing a completely natural and organic farming practice. They don't even ask for any certification. They trust the farmers. In fact, some people, even at my place, when I do the market, I take some of the people right into the growing section, and I'm harvesting in front of them. I tell them to harvest it. So people see all of that. So that's one advantage of growing locally, where you get it really fresh, and people trust you. And especially small scale farmers, they don't need to really get into all of that expense for certifying it, because they're just supplying it locally. And most probably, if they produce a lot and they have to ship it out of state, then they have to get into certification. Then it's going to get more expensive. So that is one advantage of local produce. And finally, one of the disadvantages, what I would say, of produce from outside is, like you mentioned earlier, the carbon miles. The whole what it costs the planet, and also the pollution that goes into transporting all of these things. So,
from a purely practical point of view, I would make note of two things. Number one, if you're looking to buy organic produce, I'm taking for granted that it means you're concerned about your health and nutrition.
Right.
Fresh produce that comes from too far away is severely compromised in terms of nutrition. So if it's not locally grown, I don't see why the hell you make it a point to buy organic. It's not really doing very much for you in any case.
I'm out of state.
If to eat in the sense that there's no pesticides or no use of chemical fertilizers, but all that's not actively bad for you, it's not necessarily actually good for you either. Whereas if you're eating local, something that's been harvested ideally inside of no more than 48 hours before, you're fine. That makes sense. It's worth even paying a premium. Secondly, I'm sorry, but I have to say this. Produce coming from a small farmer is not necessarily safely grown, it's not necessarily organic.
All depends on the practice that is used there.
Sure. So let me just say that it's important to actually pay a visit to the farm and take a look at the soil, etc., and see whether there's enough organic matter in the soil, etc., to justify the notion that this produce is grown without chemical fertilizers. Because if you go stand at the Goa Bagayatar in Mapsa, there's a long, steady stream of smallholders, individual growers, coming there to pick up that little package of pesticide and little package of fertilizer. And it's entirely possible that the chemical load on a small holding is potentially higher than that of a large operation because economy of scale, in a manner of speaking. Wherever it's possible to actually, to know that a small farmer is definitely growing without resorting to artificial fertilizers, because he's engaged in practices that actually conserve nutrients in the soil, that add organic matter, that that keep building and increasing fertility. That kind of person is a gem and needs to be, truly treasured. But you do need to make sure that satisfactory practices are being followed.
Okay, the next question is, how would our audience be able to get in touch with you to find out more about your work?
I can be reached on WhatsApp at 9823 777 On Facebook, our page is Rosie and Peter's Asagao Kitchen Garden. Just type in Rosie and Peters and that'll take you there. On Instagram, we can be reached at Rosie and Peter Grow Food. Again, just type in Rosie and Peter and you'll find it, ROSIE.
So to find me, you can go to my website, darryldesouza.com, and there you will find some of our links and groups. There's also a WhatsApp group, organic farming, but I think it's almost full. Maybe there are 2-3 spaces. So where people, mainly from Goa and even across the country, we discuss daily, organic or natural farming practices. So that's a good resource. And we on Facebook, there is, I don't know if Peter mentioned, there's Permaculture Goa that Peter's very actively involved with that group.
I'm most responsive on Rosie and Peter's Asagao Kitchen Garden. Like I said, just type in Rosie and Peter and that will take you.
Oh, okay.
You can actually, from the 1st of December, I'm going to start getting people to my farm. Still a lot of people come. And you can contact me on my phone number 94207-68230 on WhatsApp.
Okay, moving on to Q&A. First question from Vartika. I am based out of Gurgaon, staying in an apartment. What are all the nutritious veggies that I can grow in regular planters?
Now in the house, basically, especially now in the rains when the sun is less, you can try growing the leafy vegetables. For example, in my garden, even in less sunlight, you have Thai spinach or thelinium growing very well, or Malabar spinach, and the regular palak also. But yes, for palak, you do need some amount of sunlight, so you'll have to take it in your balcony. And well, what else is growing well now is mint was growing. Everybody needs mint. You can grow curry patta, mint. I think that many people at least have 1-2 pots of in their house. And otherwise, I have, so since I don't grow in the house, my list is not long. I'm doing beans and all outside right now, cucumbers also. Peter, what could you please take it for indoors? What would be great to grow?
Sure. If I were to speak in very general terms, if you're growing in limited spaces, you want to get the most bang for your buck, speaking. So the smart thing to do is pick stuff that doesn't require too much sunlight, that does well in low light conditions. Leafy greens are probably your best bet. But here I'm talking about staying away from the lighter lettuces, etc., which are not terribly nutritious. But if you look at things like Molakin spinach, sisu, sweet leaf, or what they call the multivitamin plant, moringa that's pruned and kept short, maybe keep it for the leaves rather than the fruit. There's a huge number of things will give you huge amounts of nutrition, even in places where you don't have access to that much sunlight. Because in an apartment, whether you actually get sun in the places that you actually can grow on or not is often an iffy question. And also that changes from season to season. So yeah, I'd perhaps be less reliant on, unless you're certain that at a particular time of year, specific location gets sufficient sun, which means at least about 4 hours of direct sunlight. Perhaps don't look so keenly at things like aubergines and tomatoes, etc., because without a decent amount of sunlight, the results are going to be disappointing. And they're going to be discouraged for no reason other than you simply chose plants that weren't appropriate to the conditions that you're growing in. But if you just keep this in mind, you should have absolutely no trouble growing loads of food.
Actually, indoors, you can grow a lot of, like Peter was already saying, like, I think palak, red amaranthus, green amaranthus, they are powerhouses of lots of nutrients. And they're pretty easy to grow. You can just grow it with a decent amount of sunlight, and they grow pretty well. And if you want like some outdoor plants, like you were saying, tomatoes, brinjals, ladyfingers.
Yes, I would agree with Nestor on that. Red amaranth and green amaranth is something that I'm also growing right now, along with what Peter mentioned, the sweet leaf and
That grows
valerian.
very well actually. The multivitamin plant.
Yeah, multivitamin plant, and also the Malabar spinach. And then I'm growing some oregano also. That's growing well. The Indian, what do you call it, ajwain.
Have you tried kangkong? Because that thing
Yes.
pretty well. It's just like a weed, just spread.
Yes. So I'm growing kangkong too. I have that in the garden. I forgot about that. Yeah.
It really spreads like it. There's no this much this to it. Actually, it's quite easy to grow.
Yes. Next.
Okay, thank you. We can move to our next question from Sharmila. How would a layman know whether pesticides or artificial fertilizers have been used or not?
Simply look at how uniform and unblemished your produce is. If there's absolutely no sign of any pest attack, either it wasn't good enough for pests to bother eating, or it was too dangerous for them to eat.
Yeah. So I agree with those two telltale signs. Now, even as you were talking about tomatoes earlier, Peter, these off-season tomatoes that are coming here, I've seen them. They are not uniformly colored. They have got almost like a orange and spots on the red, and that for me has been even on some fruits.
Because how is it usually unripened and artificially ripened?
Yeah, so I have literally seen such fruits also when they are cut open, when they are so unevenly colored, and in a very short amount of area, you see you don't see the natural color of the fruit. You see yellow, like for a tomato, yellow and red circles.
Yellow at the top. And no
Yeah.
matter how red it is on the outside, it's never actually juicy and succulent inside. It's always kind of hard and almost corn, like overripe cucumber.
Yes. So yeah, so the color, of course, is one thing that gives it away, and then finally the taste.
So thing is, in a proper system, in a proper organic system, okay, at least speaking for me personally, I regard pests as a necessary and important part of my ecosystem. If there's a complete absence of pests, I have a problem. Because if the pests aren't present, then the predator that would feed on them to keep them under control when the numbers erupt is also not going to be present because there's no food for it. And at some point in time, if the pest should actually appear, then I won't have if I have a pest population, I will have a predator population. I'm perfectly okay with losing a small amount of produce to pests. In a healthy system, you barely lose, 5-10%, which hardly signifies because overall your production is much higher than usual. But the absence of pests is an issue. And it's also worth bearing in mind that any fruit that shows, any produce that shows signs of a little bite here and a slight deformity, etc., that fruit is generally, what the plant does is flood that bite site with antioxidants and a whole bunch of other beneficial substances that mean that eating that slightly dodgy looking produce is actually better for you than eating the plain unblemished siblings that haven't actually been affected in any way.
Right, right, makes sense. And I've heard others also, organic farmers say this, that, go for very, ordinary looking, but, colorful and maybe smaller in size fruits and veggies. If you can see, they have been, nipped at or eaten a bit by insects, because they were anyway worthy food for the insects. So definitely they're worthy to eat for us as well.
I want to say that, speaking practically, up to perhaps, I don't know, 15 or 20 years ago, it was a given that if you bought cabbages or cauliflowers from the market, for absolutely certain, 3 to 4 to every 5 would have a couple of worms and caterpillars inside. And that's fine. You just expected to find that. You cut that section away, discarded it, and ate the rest, and everything was fine. Today, you cannot actually find worms or caterpillars in your brassicas.
Yes.
And to me, that is serious cause for concern. If something that is so ubiquitously attacked by the larvae of these particular butterflies and moths comes to you with the absolute certainty that you're never ever going to see a worm, what do you suppose is being done to that produce to actually get it to your table so pest-free?
Very right. So,
and if you find out what practices actually adopted to allow this, you will be shocked out of your wits.
There's a question from Pasaja. Could we know in advance if we would have plenty of rain for the year and so plan what to grow accordingly?
By and large, you know what the rainfall trend is for your location. And well, for Goa, for example, we always assume you're going to get at least 3 meters, and we do. This year and the last year, we got significantly more, but there's no reason not to look at long-term trends for your location and plan accordingly. If you get taken by surprise, fine. But if you do a bit of planning that allows you to be flexible in the event that the rainfall is significantly either less or more than you planned for, then so much better. I mean, in these at this point in time, at this point in history, because climate change is an inescapable fact of life, it's just a given that we are not going to see neatly predictable weather patterns anymore. There's always going to be fluctuations. I don't know if it's ever going to settle down in our lifetimes, but well, by and large, you look at the trends and hope for the best.
I was just thinking for, maybe in a place like Goa, is it possible for us to, nobody's growing millets here as a grain. They're growing it as a vegetable, like the green amaranth leaves or the red amaranth leaves, tamdi bhaji that we get regularly. And since more of nutritional studies are showing that, millets, the wide range of millets are turning out to be more healthier than rice and wheat. So any idea, Peter, in Goa, have we grown millets earlier? And is there any scope to grow millets during the season over here in Goa
Which season? Which season?
Okay, so for example, I have been growing amaranth red amaranth even after the rains and even in the summer.
But that's kind of the point. Millets are not, millets are crop that do well in low water conditions and relatively arid conditions,
Right.
which is why they are extremely well suited for growing after the monsoon, outside of the monsoon.
Right.
So farmers who are kind of a little challenged for water and irrigation, this is the ideal crop to grow. I know Bajra, Jawar, for example, grow with absolutely zero problem here. You get these huge, really luxuriant heads with zero trouble. So there's no real reason, I can see no real reason why we can't adopt growing millets outside of the monsoon.
Right. Yeah, that's
Grain
right.
amaranth as well.
Yes.
I've grown that often enough and it produces it no problem. The monsoon is not the time to be trying to grow grain amaranth. The
Right,
rest of the year, absolutely.
Of course. So that's why I do it after the rains and in the summer too. So yeah, just wondering why. Maybe that's again the point of, education. When people are not aware of it and people don't ask for it, then obviously the farmer is not going to grow it. Right?
Yes. So the thing is, our chief minister isn't going to spread awareness. Our chief minister isn't going to ask for minutes. We need to. And we need to spread the awareness of the desirability of making seasonal choices. We need to spread awareness of the existence of all these seasonal options and why they're better for us, why they make so much more sense for us in so many different ways. And that's pretty much the only way to make that happen.
Yeah, next question is from Varun. What's the best way to store onions and other root vegetables?
Away from each other for one. I think a lot of people don't realize that storing onions and potatoes next to each other causes both of them to ripen faster and start sprouting. One thing that's really important to know is they both give off gases that induce the other to ripen faster, and they need to be stored separately. And the other thing is cool and dark conditions, well ventilated. Don't let it get too humid.
Thank you to all our panelists for the information shared, and thank you to our audience for being here with us.